Have you figured out what color the horse is this week? Well, I tell you what, we'll talk about it when we come back. Okay, so take a look at my shirt. What color is it? Yep, you guessed it. I'm hoping it's not a surprise though. I'm hoping you read ahead into verses 5 and 6 to study what was going to be happening next. I know I would have. So, yep, it's the black horse. Third seal's being opened. Jesus is cracking this thing open, and they're asking, for John, the Apostle John, to come and check this out. Okay, so our study today is in verses 5 and 6 of chapter 6, and we're going to start with verse 5. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. So the third creature, now we've talked about in the last two episodes how this is happening, and there's an order to these creatures according to Revelations chapter 4, verse 7. And the next creature we're going to be talking about, the next creature that actually said, "Come and see," was the one with the face of a man. Okay, black horse. As a result of wars and the killing that starts to occur, when the second seal was opened, the color black represents the results of wars that will start in the third seal, and it really has a lot to do with famine, disease, and food shortages at this point in time. So, in the perspective of a pre-trib situation here, if you're left here during this time, you're gonna face famine. You're gonna face no food or very little food, and that's basically what the representation of the scales are. Okay, so before we get to that point, though, the color black also represents frightfulness and mourning. Okay, when you look into history, 1347 to 1351, there was a 4-year period of a plague that happened, and they actually called it the Black Death. All right, over 200 million people died of this Black Plague, or the plague, or this Black Death in Europe during that time. And it was the plague had gone out through mostly rodents that had caught a ride on ships, people that were coughing. You could get it in contact and shaking their hand, hugging, and just imagine what would have happened if that happened in this day and age, where transportation is so much more, like airplanes, cars, trains, things like that. Of course, our motorcycles, things like that, where we could vastly travel the world a lot quicker than they did back then. So in 4 years, if a plague like that came here now, we could wipe out the entire world with that. But the thing is 200 million people died of this, and they probably thought at that point in time that the fourth seal was being opened. Okay, so that was 60% of the population at that point in time, right? So let's talk about the writer. He comes and he has these scales in his hand, and represents how they're going to ration out food, and food is going to be extremely hard to come by, right? Okay, famine will always follow war, especially in this point in time. Okay, so let's read Revelations chapter 6, verse 6. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." Okay, let's break this down. Now, if this is the first time that you're watching my YouTube video, you're going to find out that we'll take the scripture and we'll dissect it. We're going to expose the scripture. It's called expository preaching. All right, so we're going to expose this. What is a denarius? A denarius was a Roman silver coin that came about in 211 BC. It was right during the Second Punic War. All right, and it was about this big, about as big, a little bit bigger than your eyeball, and it represented one day's wages but most likely for a poor man's wages. And so the quart of wheat for a denarius, it's a quart jar. We're thinking of a quart jar at this point in time, and that's like 1,000 grams of wheat for 1 quart jar, and that's like 3,400 calories. That's it for a whole day, all right, and 130 grams of protein. If you're trying to feed a family of 4 on that, somebody's going to starve, right? So you see how this is equating to a very poor time, a desperate time. Okay, and they're going to give 3 quarts of barley for the same price. So you're probably understanding that 3 quarts of barley is not much more. It's probably got a lot less food, nutrition for the barley as for the wheat. So either way, you're not going to be eating very well. So the thing is the reason why this is all happening is the government at that point in time, that government that's established, they're going to be controlling you with that food intake or outtake, or the food. So the thing is what happens when people get desperate for food? They're going to do whatever it takes. They're going to serve false gods. They're going to bow down. They're going to do whatever it takes. Okay, remember, these are people that did not accept Christ before this all happened. So if they had after the fact, they're still going to have to eat, right? And so it's going to be a very, very rough time for people. Do not harm the oil and the wine. All right, by the voice from the mist, the 4 living creatures is commanding the one on the black horse to do not harm the oil and the wine. Again, we see judgments that are poured out precisely under God's control. Do you get this? Okay, why not harm the oil and the wine? Well, the wine, back during the Bible times, it was drank more than water because water wasn't all that great to drink. There was diseases in it. It wasn't healthy. Wine was like a watered down version of what we have today. It still had some fermentation to it because fermentation allows grape juice to prolong its existence. Okay, you can hold on to it a little bit longer. And it's worth money. It is expensive, okay? So the oil is even more expensive. It's used for cooking, it's used for fuel, it's used to light your lanterns, things like that. So God is telling the rider on the horse, you're not going to hurt. You're not going to destroy or harm this. It's very expensive. All right, so the 4th horse is coming. What color is he? And why is he coming? We're going to find out next time. You guys have a great day.